And if we're tying all of this into again organic versus paid, it probably means that we should all start kind of taking into consideration that likes actually mean something a little bit more again. It's kind of
Hmm.
crazy. It's cyclical, right? It's like after a while before, like no one cared about how many likes you really had. You can go run some ads and display, based on the cookie or the pixel, still show up on a display ad. But now we might want to be looking at likes again and
Hmm.
running specific campaigns to just gain more likes and followers because that's just a surefire way that they will see an ad because they don't need a cookie to actually find you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Marketing on the Rocks. It's been a little bit, but we're happy to be back. Hey Samad, how
Definitely
you
am.
doing?
Good man. How you doing, Andres?
Good. It's been a really good day actually.
Yeah.
Not too hot, got a lot of stuff done today, which was good.
Uh, yeah. It's been crazy loud outside. I don't know how it is or in terms of where you are specifically. I know you're not too far from me, but we were late with our cicadas.
It,
And then they came in.
yeah, it's been bad. It's definitely loud. You hear it pretty much all day. Depending on where you guys are in the US, the cicadas they come out every 17 years and it's just so loud. They fly everywhere. I was on a run the other day and I ended up with like five different times how to get a cicada for me because they're just everywhere. There
That's
was one in my car, like inside my car too, and I was keeping my windows down. I don't know how that happened. I mean, windows up. So,
I, I don't know what these guys are thinking. I know they're all really horny and whatnot, but they are not up in New Jersey. They're definitely more of a DC. I think that they kind of go to Ohio and whatnot. But I went up to New Jersey for my brother's wedding over the past weekend. It's probably part of the reason why we've been so MIA. I apologize, guys. And nothing. There were none up there. We
so for them, it's next year because my sister lives in New York, and I think for that whole area, it's actually next year.
gotcha. So they're I don't know, brewed 11 or something
Yeah.
instead of brewed 10. But we came back on Monday night and our driveway was just filled with cicadas. Like my wife and I had to kind of do this like, quick, like open the door, close it to get every suitcase in because there were so many. And we're like, what the heck? Why are they only at our freaking driveway? We looked at all the other driveways that weren't there. And I'm guessing it's probably because we haven't been there for enough time. So there's not been any disturbance for them.
Hmm.
That's my theory, at least. Who knows? Maybe they
Yeah.
just like our Java. Better
Yeah.
dirt or
Yeah. I
something.
don't know. All right. So today we're actually drinking Brother Spawn. And I've brought it up before. It's from these two guys that were in the Vampire Diaries together. It's a really popular TV show. A few years back, it was on for like 8 years, and then the two main characters, they're brothers in the show, and they ended up becoming really good friends, and they actually made their own bourbon. Now I know we've talked about white labeling, but the cool thing about it is they went, pretty much from scratch when it came to blending. So they spent about 2 years just taste testing and making sure everything was exactly right, picking the right mesh between um its bourbon. So I don't know what the actual, like, it has to be at least forty
Probably like
percent.
mash or
Yeah,
yeah,
but they spent
whatever it
so
is.
much time dealing with that to make sure that it was actually what they wanted. And it's funny because I just heard somebody talking this morning about like how bad somebody else's tequila was, that they just slapped a label on it. So I really appreciate this guys like taking the time and actually going into it. I've been like following them online, and they always they talk about the whole process. So it was pretty cool. So I decided to get about all of
Nice.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. I wonder if that was the Kardashians. What was it? One of the
actually it
Kardashians
was.
said, yeah,
It was. I just remember that.
getting bad reps all over the place with it's Jenner actually. I think it's Kylie Jenner or something like that.
Hmm.
Chloe. One of those. One of them.
They're still making money. So
Yeah. And you can white label anything, but it still should be good quality.
right. And that's something everybody has to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But
Well,
cheers.
cheers, man.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
I thought we should, it's been a while, so we should probably follow up on, the state of paid ads, just because I know a lot of people are talking about it. We've now had a couple of weeks of just experiencing it. So, and we did a little, if you recall, just completely outside of Marketing on the Rocks, we did a little video with, content or paid, organic and paid marketing. And, that still is extremely relevant. And, there's a lot of new things that are out there. Even in the past couple of weeks, it's changed. It's crazy how quick this stuff changes. So,
And I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen. So we're in, June 2021. A lot of the pop-up notifications when you log into an ad, if you have an iPhone, like, do you want to be allowed to be tracked? And a lot of people are, actually paying attention to that. A lot of people aren't. So, I think that's important for us to talk about today too.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think the adoption rate for, I'm just going to tell you so I don't mess up with the facts. The adoption rate for iOS, I was actually talking with someone about this just recently. That's iOS 14. That's where we're at right now. And we're at 90%. Yeah. We're at 90% adoption rate at this point in time.
Adoption meaning people are agreeing to.
People agreeing or updating their phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. So yeah, iOS 14 adoption rates touch 90% ahead of whenever 15 comes out. And again, guys, Apple's WWDC conference, which I know we've talked about on this show before, WWDC 2021 is
Coming up.
Is it now?
It might
If
be.
it is, we should probably do a whole video just on that because we're late to the game. iOS 15. Yeah, we probably have to make a whole video. I think it just happened, guys. I've been so busy that I haven't actually paid attention to that, and that's really, I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm going to digest that and let everyone know what iOS 15 is about. Especially to do a follow-up to what we thought what would happen with WWDC coming up, in terms of what devices might be, on the horizon in September. So I'll keep that and, digest, and we'll do another video later on that one. But yeah, so it's already happened. WWDC's come into play. Apple's coming out with a whole new iOS in September, probably starting beta testing. I'd say probably, now till August or September if you're one of the Apple early developer or early beta testers, which you can be if you want to. But if it's already at 90%, that means this is something that all of us just need to keep on the forefront at all times.
Definitely.
Yeah. And let's just correct that number 1 sec. Right? That doesn't mean 90% people are blocking your cookies, right? I don't know if there's actually any data out there on that. We should look into it to see how many people are actually allowing or declining a particular site, Facebook, IG, whatever it may be, to track you or not. I have taken a note of myself. I don't know about you, Andres, but I'm kind of 50-50. I wanted to just test out and see how the user experience becomes. So I've allowed a couple, but definitely some of the other ones, I definitely have had decline. And I don't want them to be tracking me.
Right. I'm the same way. There's a lot of them that I've been very selective with them. But I mean, overall, I like the fact that we have that option. Just having that option, I think it's because so many people didn't know about it. It's coming to light a little more, and it's just really interesting to see how people feel about it.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. And then, you know, if we're tying all of this into, again, organic versus paid, it probably means that we should all start kind of taking into consideration that likes actually mean something a little bit more again. It's kind
Hmm.
of crazy. It's cyclical, right? It's like after a while before, like no one cared about how many likes you really had. You can go run some ads and display, you know, based on the cookie or the pixel, still show up on a display ad. But now we might want to be looking at likes again and
Hmm.
running specific campaigns to just gain more likes and followers because that's just a surefire way that they will see an ad because they don't need a cookie to actually find you.
Hmm. One thing that I've noticed, so I have like a separate account. For you guys that don't know, I'm really into suits and men's fashion and everything like that. So I have a separate Instagram account for that. And I've recently started diving into Reels, and the reach is actually crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the time, the timing of the day is almost flipped from actual posts, and IGTV just has no traction anymore. It's really interesting how, and it's because of TikTok. They're just trying to compete, and they want people to feel good about having all those views, having all those likes, that, they're just kind of letting their old algorithm, the more organic ones, kind of run wild, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah. Who knows if the Reels adoption rate versus TikTok is right now. We know that Biden just kind of reversed that executive order on TikTok just today. But
From what I've seen with my peers, it's kind of 50-50. Some people swear off TikToks, but they're on Reels all the time. And then there's people that are on TikTok all the time, but don't watch Reels at all. So it's really interesting.
yeah, I mean, it might be a generational thing too. I mean, TikTok was always a little bit younger.
Hmm.
Like, I never got into it. I liked the idea of it and downloaded it, but like was like, man, I don't have time for another one. But I'm like a dinosaur when it comes to this because I don't even have it on my phone, mainly because of personal choice and not being distracted. But you know, IG is on my Instagram. So I mean, wow, on my Instagram, on my iPad. So that makes Reels easy to access still.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there's not a lot of data on um, Reels kind of replacing TikTok or adoption rates on that yet. That's interesting to see. But yeah, going to our question on, you know, what do we do in terms of paid? And it's funny because I've done a couple polls, just, you know, talked with a couple people that are really, you know, well-known marketers, if you will. Some are actually in the political spectrum, and some are more on, you know, what probably you and I are more into, which is more like, you know, e-com or direct to consumer, versus the B2B guys, which are always a little bit more old school in general, right? Like, you know, lead generation is always kind of boring in a way. You can't get as much fun. E-com is definitely the funnier, yeah, the more interesting ways to advertise because you can go lifestyle and have more pictures and video. But the political guys are all saying that Twitter ads now is going up.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody that's in politics or, that realm that I've talked to, they're just like, yeah, we're on Twitter all the time. And I'll be completely honest with you guys. I haven't really been on Twitter for at least a month and a half. I haven't even touched it. I have it on my phone. I get notifications, but I haven't touched it in a month and a half.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a direct correlation, right? Like, I mean, because um, ad costs have been dropping considerably on Facebook. We've seen that across the board in different industries. But also on that note, that's great that it's dropping. Definitely becoming harder to penetrate right now. Like a CPA, cost per acquisition, is going off the roof because you got to have way, 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 way more touch points. Um, and you got to get really like hyper local and find other ways than just, you know, the cookies, because if the pixel's not picking up, it's just not gonna specifically be there. So like shot outs and giveaways and doing things in terms of gaining followers or getting people to sign up to an email list to then, retarget them through email. That's all stuff that's becoming a little bit more prominent, and probably what we should all be doing anyway, because the email is still probably the strongest way to market, right? Like
Mhm.
that's still the only thing you truly own for yourself. Facebook
Right.
shut you down tomorrow, so
And there's a
you
lot
want
of
to keep
things
it all
that,
there.
yeah, there's a lot of promotions that you can definitely do through email,
Mhm.
but as soon as you put it on Facebook and make it an ad, they'll just shut you down right away.
Yeah.
And you will have no traction, and they'll almost penalize you for it in your next couple of posts.
Yeah. So I think let's just say first takeaway out of a couple of weeks now into iOS 14 is give some love to your email list. Let's just put it that way. Like, just start bringing more touch points. Your email list probably doesn't care.
Mhm.
So don't neglect it, but try, right? Like see what it looks like and then segment, right? Like you can segment out the people that have unsubscribed or didn't open. Don't obviously, most of the email services out there will remove someone if they've already unsubscribed. That's kind of a given. But if they don't open it, then don't hit them up again because you might get them to unsubscribe. They're probably still seeing it. They just didn't open it. They probably put it right in the trash.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, don't go on their bad side, right? Like just remove those people that didn't open. Just say you're doing a test because you need to find new routes to advertise. Send out your email, whatever offer it may be, and then the people that don't open, exclude them from the next email that goes out so you can keep your unsubscribe rate down. But that's
Yeah.
definitely takeaway number one from where Facebook is at right now.
And one thing that I just want to add for everybody watching,
Mm-hmm.
um, always try to make sure that, even every 3 months or whatever, send out an email asking people to just, go like your Facebook page, go follow your Instagram, something like that. Obviously, have some type of incentive, have some good text to it. But now that, ads can, with iOS 14, things are getting a little bit harder. Those emails do have a lot of value.
100%. Yeah. And then the second, I think takeaway, guys, is diversify. I mean, just again on that point on on TikTok and Reels, all kind of coming into play. Like start placing more content everywhere, and then buy ads in places that you probably didn't think of before. Twitter being one. It might be good for your industry. Might not, right? Like I'd say more the software guys that are out there, the SaaS guys, the politics side of things. Probably even more like the regulation, like professionals, B2B guys that are professional about it. They still use it for obviously like being on top of like the new trends and new news that are coming out since it's so news heavy or statement heavy, obviously. So depending on what you're selling or what you're you know offering to your your customers or your clients, paid Twitter ads might be one solid way. I actually don't think that you should completely discount Bing and those type of different aspects, like Bing being a big one actually, just depending on your audience again, right? Like if they're older people that, and I'm not trying to discount or knock on it, it's just it is the case, it's just a stat. You might want to be advertising on Bing, like depending on what your what your offer, your sales are, your services are. So yeah, I'd say look into Bing as well. But diversify, like basically the common theme of this is of point number two with what's going on with Apple. And again, should you be doing content organic? I'd say is just diversify into as many places as possible that you can start putting traffic out. And that still means less reliance on the cookie then, because you're just still dropping more traffic without the hope of cooking someone at the end, because they might not cook you. It might not be worth it in the long run anymore.
Yeah.
Point number 3, I'd say, is actually on branding, guys. I mean, it really goes down to it, right? Like, I mean, yeah, the cookies were there, which kind of did a lot of the dirty work, or even, I guess, the heavy lifting, if you will, of being in front of someone, right? You can serve up multiple different ads if you have, the pixel and the cookies on Google and Facebook. But now with iOS shutting a lot of that down, and again, we don't know how many people are actually allowing cookies or not. I would still say that a lot of people would, right off the bat, start declining them. That means that, you got to be more nifty and creative with your brand, because people just got to remember you in another route instead of just by a cookie at this point.
And it goes back to, what we talked about a few weeks ago, true branding back in the day, billboards and, pamphlets and all that kind of things that they were doing in the Mad Men times. Obviously now in the digital era, but it's, being top of mind.
Yeah.
Which goes back to organic.
There's some really cool marketplaces right now. We should probably test some of this out, Andres, ourselves, where you can actually go rent a digital billboard for like nothing. I'm not sure which one of our, companies in our portfolio we would want to do this for. Maybe even ourselves, who knows? But yeah,
that would be helpful.
they're cheap right now, and mainly for the fact that they're just not as difficult to do anymore. You know what I mean? It doesn't require any installation costs or setup or any of that stuff these days, right? Like, it's all digital. You send over the graphics and you're done, right? Like, and you choose the market you'd want to hit, and you might actually get some good results, especially from a branding perspective. You don't want to look at it only from a lead point of view. But man, like, even those mobile ones that are going around, on the local roads might be worth it, just as a way to stay top of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that's coming full circle again.
Yeah. It kind of goes into direct mail too, because direct mail was one that you and I have talked about before, thought about probably even putting a funnel together on it. And it probably makes sense to still do. I mean, it just probably means you might not get as much on a retargeting, which is a pretty decent strategy to have. Of, you would hit people on an IP address based on a flood of, 4 different zip codes. You can still do that because it's still technically now not on a cookie, right? So you can still advertise on Facebook through IP address and by a geographical location. And Apple's not going to shoot you down by doing that. So you might want to start going back into, geographical circumference-based, IP-based marketing, or geofencing, if you will, and blanket areas that, might need something in general.
Mm-hmm. And that, we were talking about going very hyper local.
Yep.
So it all depends on, what your business is. And we actually had a client talking to us about that, because they're an online business, but then we wanted to go very local first. And they were kind of pushing back on that. But for some reason, I just feel like, if it's something like a local business, a lot of people just feel safe when they see the address, when they see, it's, I know where that is. I know that street. It just has that trust. And, if you pair that up with the virtual billboards, it just kind of amplifies that effect.
Yeah, it's kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will. And I have also, just from a direct mail perspective, I've seen, I don't know if you got this in your mail, Andres, or not, but like there was like kind of like the Valpak style, but it was specifically called like the premium brand. So it kind of caught my attention. It was like, all right, this premium brand Valpak. And it had things like, HelloFresh and nice laundry for socks and things like that in it. But a whole bunch of like subscription lifestyle businesses all, decided to be in this like direct mail, kind of promotional Valpak or pennies, probably a little less pennies there, but Valpak's probably the best example for it, type of route. So, people are looking to go into those type of models to still actually take advantage of FB, IG, and Google, because then you can still tie into all of their geofencing. Actually, the same client that you probably were talking about on the local aspect brought up like liking or targeting places that might have wealth but might be in areas that don't have the wealth, like expensive gyms, if you will.
Mhm.
And I tend to agree with that, but I know that that's short-lived because of cookies, even though it's still kind of geofencing. So now it just, again, it goes back into this whole consideration that you can go in and target people based on their likes. So if they like SoulCycle, you
Mhm.
can still target them, and you probably won't have this pixel issue anymore, as long as you're not, targeting people on the pixel side. So here's probably kind of a freebie pointer that are not part of the 4 that we've now gone over. But what I would recommend for like, more advanced marketers that are out there that are probably hopefully watching this, but maybe they'll pick this up and thank us later, is actually start up a business manager that actually has no pixel whatsoever, and start putting some ads on that too, because then your ads are not going to be automatically shut down by Apple. If you're running, let's just say XYZ campaign from Facebook Business Manager, and there is no pixel whatsoever, so there's no danger, at least it's going to get past that first barrier of entry that Apple has, which is anyone that has a pixel, where if these guys, our user, right, our phone user decides to, or Apple ID user decides to say, nope, no, I don't want cookies from Facebook anymore, at least your ads still show up.
Mhm.
Which I think is what a lot of people won't even think about, right? Like, so you want to just start up, maybe recycle a whole different business manager you have, because you all have limited amounts of this, but create one and just don't attach any pixel whatsoever, and just consider it only branding.
Mhm.
You obviously can still send people to a website, but just there's no pixel on it. There's no pixel for that particular ad campaign to cookie them.
It's funny. Back in the day, I did that by accident, but we
Yeah.
started from results. So
Hey, like you said, everything kind of comes full circle, right? um, so yeah, and I think ultimately it just means we all just got to keep putting more content out there in general. Yeah, I mean, it goes again to that question of like, should we just go do paid ads and not do any content? And it's got to be a healthy mix, like,
Mhm.
because boosting your content is still going to act differently than a paid ad will. So it probably means that boosting content and publishing more content, and then allowing Facebook or IG or even LinkedIn in this case, and LinkedIn is now actually allowing you to quote unquote boost, right, content on your LinkedIn feed now too. So you might want to do that for all of these.
Yeah, I think we talked about last time we were talking about, paid ads, how boosting is just such an amplifier to everything else you do. And you don't have to boost it for a long time, just, a few
Couple
days.
bucks, yeah,
Mhm.
couple days, maybe under $30.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's all you really need. Yeah. What else have you seen out there, man?
I've seen a lot more of, new people just coming in and just having fun, which is kind of refreshing for, just to see people go back to a lot more of the organic. And, I'm watching a video and then I realized it was actually a paid ad. And that was kind of cool to see that happening again.
Yeah, it's like those advertorials are back
Mm-hmm.
in a way. Actually, it was another, we were talking earlier about what content's been doing well for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another one that actually has done pretty well. It's the Taboola one. So like
Yeah.
native ads and advertorials are actually, important these days, especially with
Mhm.
how things are working. Those are still different than a Facebook ad or a
Yeah.
pixel. So yeah, that's another one there.
And one thing that I know you know more about this than I do, what about like YouTube and Google Ads? How is that changing at all with iOS 14 or?
Yeah, it's still a little less like clear at this point because if you recall, we talked about this on one of these Marketing on the Rocks episodes. It's like, does Apple go like to the extreme of removing Safari? And most people right now are not using Google on their phones. They use Chrome on their computers, but they don't really use Chrome on their iPhones, if you will.
Mhm.
I definitely don't. Mainly, probably for the fact that natively Safari is just the first thing
Right.
that opens up, and it's on the bottom of your phone in general. So I think Google's kind of slipping by in general, mainly for the fact that their tag, which is the same thing as a Facebook pixel, isn't as strong as how Facebook has had it.
Mhm.
So, it doesn't allow as much targeting in terms of audiences as Google, or as Facebook does, which is probably why Apple's kind of going off of Facebook more than Google in general. But their answer to iOS and Apple shutting down or hurting, the pixel and the tag in general, or display ads and cookies, was that they amplified Google Shopping. So mainly for the fact that every lifestyle business that's out there is going and doing ads on Facebook and IG because you're just scrolling and you find something cool. You next thing you know, you're buying it on Instagram or whatever it may be. You don't do that as much on Google Shopping, if you will. And now there's a lot of opportunity on Google Shopping these days. If you're an e-com business, definitely start Google Shopping right away. And then also start looking into, more reviews for your product, because that actually now amplifies your Google Shopping listing even without spending any paid dollars. So you now have a kind of two-pronged or bang for your buck, if you will, of getting SEO value out of Google Shopping, as well as you can start doing some Google Shopping campaigns and kind of squeak by. You probably won't get as much mobile users though, because Google Shopping is definitely a little wanky, if you will, on mobile. I mean, if you do a search, and I'll do one right now, and I'm just on my browser, right, and I type in sock subscription. Just, I don't know why. I think because I might have said nice laundry earlier. So, I'll get the display ads, the search ads very quickly. Like, out of the box, you can't see that obviously, but out of the box, like monthly subscription, that's one ad. And another one is, again, another text, like display ad, like, search ad, if you will. But the Google Shopping, which kind of looks like that, it's kind of a little bit hard to see because it's kind of glary, doesn't show up on the top, right? You have to actually scroll kind
Mhm.
of midway to the page on your phone to see the Google Shopping section, which looks like that right there, right? Which means, that person would have to scroll midway through their, you know, their screen to get to that, versus on desktop, they'll see it right on the top. So that's still under the radar in a way, because Apple doesn't, the most simplest way of putting it, Andres, is Apple's not putting that notification of, do you want this site to not follow not follow you or cookie you, mainly because most people are using Safari right now. And it's not that Apple's not going to say, do you want Safari to not ever pixel you?
Right.
So they're only doing it for third-party apps and not for native apps or even websites, right? So if someone goes to a website, you can still pixel them and retarget them maybe when they get to their computer, because Apple's only doing, kind of the push notification for, hey, this app is, tracking you only for apps that are outside of, a native Apple app that's out there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, but you can kind of definitely go back, man, and see that, the writing's kind of on the wall that Apple is going to monetize this and, pick up the pieces in one way or the other. And I think I'd say, again, we did a whole video on this once before, but they already have now come out with the first step of that, which is paid ads on podcasts. Like there's now monetization of podcasts that have already started. That was like the update that came out this Monday, which is kind of had a patch. It had a security update, mainly for the fact that some people that were subscribing to some paid podcasts, if you will, were not getting the right experience yet. So they updated it again. And, if we are in the podcast space, we're now going to have, on top of maybe, let's just say we're talking about a specific product that's sponsoring us, we might not actually get enough opportunity for that anymore because Apple is going to drop their own ad in our podcast because we're a free podcast. So we're going to need to go in and kind of create, if you and I were doing a podcast, or anyone that's out there that is doing one, you would want to now have to go create a whole different layer of subscription kind of content that might be a little bit more detailed or whatever it may be, so you can get people to go subscribe to your podcast. It monetizes it for you, which is great. You can get a little side revenue out of it, but it means you can't be as general, right? You can maybe have the general content on more of the freebie side of things. Or if you have the same content that's going to be dual purpose for a free podcast versus a paid one, that's fine. It's kind of the same as YouTube and YouTube Premium. You're basically paying for a podcast experience that doesn't have any ads in it. But I think you're going to find that it's going to serve you better if you actually start creating kind of a second tier advanced show that's meant for the paid subscribers, because you'll probably get some more dollars out of it, and probably actually get some more sales, or if that's why you're doing a podcast or whatever it may be, you probably get some more, traction with that, because it just depends on how that user is using, whatever paid method that they are using in general. So like for me, I'm on YouTube Premium all day, just watching videos or listening to music or whatever. So the more, like kind of affiliate style ads that show up in a side of a, Marvel show makes more sense for me, mainly for the fact that I'm not really seeing any other outside noise from Google on these ads. So you might want to be in that same space by being a premium show, because you might actually get way more, affiliate sales or whatever it may be out of it.
Especially if you already have, a good following.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I find interesting, I was reading, I can't remember if it was definitely this week, but not Apple, Facebook is coming out with a watch
Mm-hmm.
to like go against Apple, and I just
Crazy.
find like the little like rivalry so interesting.
Yeah. It almost sounds like it was just more of a direct play on them playing off
Yeah,
of iOS. I just don't see how many people would actually use it.
it just
Just
when I was reading about the specs, it was just like, oh, it's got two cameras, and I'm just like, hi.
yeah, like I mean, are you gonna be like this?
Hmm.
Like that seems a little weird. Um, it is kind of interesting that they got two cameras on it. I don't even know how that would work. Like, where exactly are the two cameras? I can only think of one place.
Right. Or if you want to like have it facing out, or do you like is it like a little pen that you take out? It's gonna be interesting to see.
Yeah,
Because I seem like they want to go through with it just for nothing else, like in spite of Apple coming out with this update. So, but that might be a step into the world, and they might be competing with Apple. So we'll see.
they're kind of already in the hardware world, but they're just such a sleeper in it, right? Like they got Portal, which no one cares
Hmm.
about, no one talks about because of Alexa and Google.
Hmm.
So you know they're not touching that. But I think again that one product that most people don't even know is actually owned by Facebook is Oculus.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and
my
that it's becoming really popular too.
it from a gaming perspective, yeah, it's becoming awesome. Like we played the Star Wars one, like my brother has it. It's pretty cool. But his company actually, because they're a little bit more mobile friendly, or they're literally specifically a brand that caters to mobile users.
Hmm.
Um, they do have like these new like co-working or like work environments on Oculus, so you can actually be like kind of in the same room with your
Oh.
colleague or your client. And that's kind of cool, and that might be again another take on to Apple because we talked about it
Mhm.
before. I think Apple is going to try to come out with glasses.
Right.
Maybe Facebook is going to be like, hey, we got to get this AR stuff going now.
Yeah, and I mean, Oculus has actually been. I remember doing a whole presentation to actually the Ravens, like the Baltimore Ravens, on how they could use Oculus for, to kind of keep people in the stadium and not just watch games at home. Back
Mhm.
when I was in college, so they've been around for a while.
Yeah, they were one of the companies that Facebook just bought up, like
Hmm.
outside of basically a purchase, not a patent, if you will.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we can sit here and speculate, but I think that still probably means that all of our paid ads are going to start changing quite a bit, especially I think again that writing is definitely on the wall with how Apple's doing it with the podcasts.
Hmm. Who knows? Maybe a couple years from now, we'll have paid ads on Oculus, and in the middle of your game, you just get immersed into some type of paid ad experience. That'd be crazy,
I
but
don't think
it
it.
could
I, don't,
happen.
I definitely see it happening, man. Because that's definitely that Minority Report deal. I think
Hmm.
Apple's trying to do it without the big, heavy headset, which is definitely improved because I know like Samsung, as an example, had it beforehand, where you
Hmm.
can put your like phone into like a kit type thing.
Yeah,
It wasn't. It was kind of wanky still. So it's improved, but if Apple comes in and streamlines it, like it's game over. Like
yeah.
on that particular effect. So
Well,
I know that
let
we
us.
went into devices, but I think they're all kind of connected.
Mhm. If you guys have any idea on any of that, please let us know in the comments. Or actually, let us know how many of you guys have actually, allowed iOS 14 to keep tracking you, or how many of you guys have declined. We'd be really interested to know those stats. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. And, like us, subscribe to us, do all of the above because it all does matter. We totally appreciate you guys.
yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Cheers.